Let me tell you something I've never taught before. How to reach your first million. I'm not going to give you generic advice. I'm not going to repeat what you've heard 1,000 times from every financial guru on the internet. I'm going to show you the exact mathematics, the real numbers, and the difficult decisions that most people don't have the guts to make. This isn't for people looking for quick tricks. This isn't for people searching for shortcuts. This is for those who want the naked truth about building their first million. If you're expecting me to tell you it's easy, you can stop watching right now, because it's not easy, but it is possible, and I'm going to show you exactly how. But first, I need to give you a warning. $1 million today is not $1 million from decades ago. Inflation has already eroded a good chunk of the power that number used to have. But even so, this number remains an important psychological milestone. It's a moment when you start having far more options in life. You can walk away from stupidity. You can say no to things that waste your time. You can take risks that the salary dependent can't afford to take. I'll be direct with you. Most people will never get there. Not because it's impossible, but because they're not willing to do what's necessary. They want the result without the process. They want freedom without discipline. They want the compound interest curve without pushing the damn snowball uphill first. And here's what nobody wants to admit. The difference between those who make it and those who don't isn't intelligence. It's not luck. It's not connections. It's behavior. Consistent. Discipline. Sometimes painful behavior repeated over years when nobody's watching and nobody's applauding. Now comes the practical part. The real mathematics. The first thing you need to do is define a clear goal, not a vague dream, a specific target with a deadline. I want $1 million in 10 years. This forces you to calculate how much you need to save per month. It forces you to make hard decisions. It forces you to look at your life and ask what you're willing to sacrifice. Dreams don't have deadlines. Goals do. And goals force you to act. Let's assume you want to reach your first million in 10 years. And let's assume your investments will return 10% annually. That's optimistic, but it's the historical average of the market over the long term. Pay attention to these numbers because they don't lie, and they don't care about your feelings. If you're starting from zero with nothing saved, you'll need to invest about $5,400 per month. That's almost $65,000 per year. It's a lot of money. Most people can't do it unless they earn very well and live spending very little. The math is brutal, but it's honest. If you already have $80,000 saved, the number drops to about $4,700 per month. Still heavy, but more achievable. If you already have $200,000 saved, now we're talking. You only need to save around $2,500 per month. Much more doable. And here's where it gets interesting. The more you already have, the less you need to contribute because that money you've already accumulated is going to work for you without you having to do anything. It grows by itself while you sleep. Let me show you the magic. Take that $200,000. Let it earn 10% per year for 10 years. At the end, it becomes about $520,000. You did nothing. The money grew on its own. Now look at this. If you need 1 million total, and you're already going to have $520,000 just from the money that grew by itself, how much is missing? Only $480,000. And to gather $480,000 in 10 years, you only need to save about $3,000 per month. See, the earlier you start, the more time does the heavy lifting for you, and the less you need to struggle later. Every year you delay is a year that never comes back, and that lost year costs you a lot of money down the road. But there's a problem with these calculations. They assume you're going to earn 10% every single year. And life doesn't work that way. Some years the market goes up 30%. Other years it drops 20%. It's not a straight line going up. So what do? 3 things. First, plan with more conservative numbers. Instead of counting on 10% per year, count on 7 or 8%. That way you have a safety buffer. Second, save more money than you think you need. If you calculated you need 1 million, try to reach 1,200,000. That extra is your cushion. Third, be flexible. If the market crashes when you're close to your goal, adjust the timeline. Work 1 or 2 more years. There's nothing wrong with that. Having a plan is important, but being too rigid with the plan is stupidity. Life changes. The market changes. You need to know how to adapt. Because here's the truth. The market doesn't care about your timeline. It doesn't care that you plan to retire at 55. It does what it does. And you either adjust or you suffer. The people who succeed are the ones who can bend without breaking. They have a plan, but they're not slaves to it. Now pay attention to this, because this is the most powerful part that most people ignore. There are two ways to reach your first million faster. Option 1, earn more money and save more. Option 2, spend less and manage to save more from your current salary. Most people focus only on the first, but the second is much more powerful. I'll show you why. When you cut your expenses by 20%, you're able to save 20% more every month. It's pure mathematics. And that extra money invested every month dramatically accelerates your arrival at the first million. Practical example. If you earn $60,000 per year and spend it all, you save zero. But if you cut expenses and live on $40,000, you have $20,000 left per year to invest. That's about $1,700 per month. In 10 years, at 10% return, you have almost $350,000 just from cutting spending. That's why I say the fastest way to accumulate money is to spend less. It's not the most popular advice, but it's the most effective. People don't want to hear this. They want to be told they can have everything. The nice car, the big house, the fancy vacations, and still get rich. You can't. Not unless you're making CEO money. And even then CMOG's broke because they spend like drunken sailors. Let me give you an extreme example. A guy who's 35 years old earning $60,000 per year. He wants to reach his first million by 45. 10 years. What does he do? He cuts expenses to the bone. Lives on $25,000 per year. It's not easy, but it's possible if you have motivation. That means he saves $35,000 per year, a savings rate of almost 60%. It's high, it's radical, but it's possible. Saving $35,000 per year at 10% return. In 10 years, he has about $570,000. Not quite there yet, but if he adjusts a bit more, finds a side income, pushes harder, he gets there. Would I recommend this? Maybe, if the person is truly committed, if they understand the risks. But it's aggressive, very aggressive. It assumes high returns. Low spending doesn't have much room for error, but the lesson is clear. The more you save, the faster you get there. And the less you spend, the more you can save. It's not complicated. It's just hard. And most people would rather complain about how hard it is than actually do the hard thing. Now, before we talk about where to invest, I need to tell you something nobody wants to hear. If you have debt, you're not ready to invest. You're bleeding money. It's compound interest working against you. Debt is not a tool. Debt is a parasite. It compounds against you with perfect discipline. While you sleep, it grows. While you work, it erodes. And worse, it changes the way you think. I've seen this my entire life. Brilliant people, educated, successful, ruining their own lives with debts they thought they could control. They call it leverage. I call it legalized self-deception. The mathematics of debt is brutal. If you owe $80,000 at 15% interest, that's a guaranteed loss of $12,000 per year. You can't diversify that away. It's a guaranteed negative return. Now tell me, where are you going to find a guaranteed positive return of 15% in the market without taking risk? You're not. And here's the worst part. Debt doesn't just tax your pocket. It taxes your mind. You don't think clearly when you owe money. No matter how intelligent you are, debt reprograms your brain. Every decision becomes defensive. You stop thinking about opportunity and start thinking about survival. When you're in debt, you're in a race between compound interest and compound wisdom. Most people lose because they underestimate how fast stupidity compounds. The debt-free investor can wait for the right opportunity. The indebted investor needs to beg for one, and the market doesn't reward those who beg. So, before any investment, pay off your debts. Credit cards, overdrafts, payment plans, expensive financing. Be ruthless. Treat this like your house is on fire. You don't stand around analyzing the architecture. You run. And don't give me the story about good debt versus bad debt. There's no such thing. Both are dangerous. One kills you slowly, the other quickly, but both rob you of sleep. And you don't build rational wealth while carrying an irrational weight on your back. People with debt need things to go right. They have no margin of safety. When something bad happens, a crisis, a job loss, they break. The debt-free person has options. They can wait out the storm. They can take calculated risks. They can say no to stupidity because their survival doesn't depend on the next paycheck. Assuming you have no debt or you've already gotten rid of it, now we can talk about where to invest this money, because it's not enough to save. You need to put it to work. And where you put it determines whether you'll reach your goal or not. I've always been a stock investor, a business investor, because in the long run, stocks beat everything. Bonds, cash, real estate, everything. The market has returned about 10% per year over the last 100 years. Some decades more, others less, but on average, 10%. And if you're accumulating money for 10 years, trying to build wealth quickly, you need that return. You can't get that real return with government bonds, even if they're paying 10 or 15% nominally, because countries that pay those high rates have massive inflation that erodes the value of the currency. So the 10 or 15% from government bonds becomes 5 or 6% after inflation. You need stocks. You need exposure to businesses. Now, what stocks should you buy? Here's where it gets interesting. If you want to understand how I think, look at Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio. We have huge positions in companies like Apple, Coca-Cola, Visa, Bank of America. These aren't sexy companies. They're not the trendy startups. They're boring businesses that have been making money for decades. Why? Because I look for companies that will be here 30 years from now. Companies with real competitive advantages, strong brands. Businesses I can understand. Actually, let me tell you something. Everyone's crazy about artificial intelligence right now. I don't like it. Not because the technology is bad, but because I can't predict who's going to win that race. It's too much speculation for me. I'd rather buy Coca-Cola because I know that 20 years from now people will still be drinking Coca-Cola. But who's going to? You have no idea. And here's what you really need to do. Study. There's no other way. You need to understand the sectors of the economy. You need to understand how companies work. You need to read annual reports, understand how they make money, study the competition, analyze profit margins, see who's in charge. Start by choosing a sector you know or are interested in. Work in technology, study tech companies. Understand retail, study retailers. Like banks, study the banks. There's no point jumping from sector to sector without understanding anything. Pick 3 or 4 companies in that sector. Read everything about them. Compare the numbers. See which has the best margin, which has less debt, which has the best growth track record. Then choose the best one and buy it. Next month, repeat the process. Maybe in the same sector, maybe in another, but always studying before buying. Never buy a stock just because someone said it's good. Never buy because it's trendy. Buy because you understood the business and believe in it. Here's my suggestion. Open an investment account and every month invest in something you studied and understood. Every month for 10 years. Market up or down, doesn't matter. Just keep investing and listen carefully. There's no shortcut. I spent decades studying companies and I still do it today. Every single day. If you're not willing to do the work, then don't even start. Because investing without studying is gambling. And in gambling, over the long term, you always lose. Most people want results without effort. They want to by what the influencer mentioned. They want to follow the tip from Instagram. They want the magic formula. It doesn't exist. What exists is study, patience, and discipline. Will you make mistakes? Yes. I made mistakes many times. Bought companies that went bankrupt, lost money. But each mistake taught me something. And over time you make fewer mistakes. You learn to identify the red flags. You learn to separate propaganda from reality. Now, about market crashes, because everyone's afraid of this. What if the market crashes halfway through? What if I'm halfway to my goal and the market drops 40%? This is a valid concern, because markets crash regularly. Every 7 to 10 years there's a crash, a bear market, a recession. It happened in 2000, in 2008, in 2020, and it will happen again, probably in the next 10 years. So, if you're on this 10-year plan to $1 million, you'll almost certainly go through a crash. The question is what to do. There are 2 ways to think about a crash. Most people see it as a disaster. They panic. They sell everything. But that's exactly wrong. It's the worst thing you can do. A crash, when you're still in the accumulation phase, still saving and investing, is an opportunity, a gift. Because when the market drops 40%, everything gets cheap. Stocks that were expensive become cheap, and you're still investing every month. You're still buying, so you're buying cheap, accumulating more shares for the same money. And when the market recovers, and it always recovers, those shares you bought cheap are worth much more. So don't fear crashes. Embrace them while you're accumulating money, working, saving. A crash is your friend. It's an opportunity to buy cheap. Invest regardless of what's happening in the world. And at the beginning of your journey, engrave this. The contribution matters more than the return. If you have $10,000 invested and you get 20% return, that's $2,000. Good, but it doesn't change your life. Now, if you manage to contribute another $40,000 during the year, that matters much more than the $2,000 from returns. I'll explain better. In the first years, the money you put in every month weighs much more than the percentage that money earns. Why? Because your wealth is still small. So even if you get a high return, the absolute value remains low. But if you increase how much you save and invest, the impact is immediate and large. That's why in the beginning you need to focus on 3 things. Earn more, spend less, and invest more. Returns become more important later, when your wealth is already large. Then yes, 10 or 20% return on 1 million makes a real difference. Now, if you're already saving more and already investing, it's time to generate more income. It could be extra work on weekends. It could be freelancing in your field. It could be selling something you know how to do. It could be consulting. It could be a small business you run in your spare time. Doesn't matter how. What matters is that you do it. Think about it this way. If you earn $60,000 per year at your job, even saving half, that's $30,000 per year. It'll take a while. But if you create a small business that nets $8,000 per month in pure profit, that's $96,000 per year extra. It completely changes the mathematics of the first million, and it doesn't need to be anything extraordinary. I know people who reached $1 million selling cakes, others selling consulting, others buying and reselling things, others teaching what they know how to do. The point isn't the type of business. The point is you transform time into scalable income. In a job, you trade 1 hour for a fixed value. In a business, turn your time. So, if you're serious about this journey to the first million, stop thinking only about investments. Think about how to increase your ability to generate income. Because in the beginning, as I've said 1,000 times, contribution is king. And the best way to increase contribution is to decrease expenses and increase income. The average person not only doesn't increase income but saves almost nothing. But you're not average. And if you want above average results, you'll need above average behavior. Simple as that. Here's what I'd tell a young person wanting to reach their first million. Start now, not tomorrow, not Monday. Today. Start saving. Start investing. Even if you can't save enough to get there in 10 years. Even if the math doesn't work yet. Because every dollar you save now compounds, grows, gives you more options later. And the habit of living below your means, of investing regularly, of seeking new income that's more valuable than any investment return. Because if you build that habit, if it becomes automatic, you'll reach the first million eventually. Maybe not in 10 years, maybe in 15 or 20, but you'll get there. And when you do, you'll understand something important. The first million isn't about the number itself. It's about what that number represents. Options, freedom, security, the ability to not be forced to do things you don't want to do. Maybe you'll use your million to start a business, to live off income, to change careers, to take a sabbatical year, to invest money would. The point is you have choices. You're not trapped by the immediate need for money, and that changes everything. I'm 99 years old now, and I've been financially independent since my early 30s. Probably earlier. Actually, not because I made a fortune overnight, not because I hit one big bet, but because I lived below my means. I invested consistently, and I had patience. And patience, let me tell you, is the hardest part, because results don't come fast. In the first years, it feels like nothing's happening. You save, you invest, and the balance barely moves. It's frustrating. It's discouraging. A lot of people quit here. But if you continue If you don't stop, the magic happens. Compound interest is like magic, but it's slow magic. In the first years, you barely see it. But after a decade, 2 decades, the numbers become absurd. Those who quit early never see the magic happen. Only those who have the patience to stay see the full show. And I promise you one thing, if you do the work, if you save consistently, invest wisely, live below your means, and give it enough time, you'll get there. Maybe not in 10 years. Maybe it takes a bit longer. But you'll get there. And when you arrive, you'll understand the journey was worth it. Not just for the money, but for the person you became in the process. Because building wealth isn't just about money. It's about developing discipline, patience, the ability to delay gratification, the skill to think long-term, and those qualities serve you in everything in life, not just finances. You'll become someone who knows how to say no, someone who thinks long-term, someone who doesn't panic when things get difficult. And those characteristics are worth more than the million itself. Wealth is not built in days, it's built in decades. And you'll get there. You just need 2 things. Start and don't stop. Most people fail because they stop. Not because they don't know what to do, but because they quit halfway through. Don't be most people. You'll get there. I guarantee it. You just need to start and not stop.